Future Design Podcast.
This is Takatoshi Shibayama, CEO of Blockshine Singapore. You're listening to the Future Design Podcast, where visionaries talk about what the future beholds. Today I got Keith Carter, Associate Professor at the School of Computing of National University Singapore. He's also the author of Actionable Intelligence, a guide to big data for business and everyday life. Will it enhance our lives or will it end up running our lives? Keith sheds light on some of these pressing questions.
Speaking about that and data, we're actually two things. One is there's this heartfelt story of a young man who's kind of troubled. And then we were talking about, well, how does this next generation get used to connecting and looking for spiritual answers and such? And data comes into play because if you go on YouTube, you'll see like a very touching song. And then underneath it, people will be writing, how the song, helped them out, or they were having a dark time and that helped them and what have you. But then where does the church, the synagogue, the other religious institutions play in responding and helping young people, with those tough times? Because they weren't coming into the institution. They were out there on social media expressing the same concerns as they normally would years past. So, how do religious people now connect with this next generation who are so into the glass of the iPad and stuff like that? And in Japan, it was interesting. They have this Shinto priest who's an AI now, right? Have you heard about this?
No, I've never heard of it.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They have a priest. You can go and you can listen to text out of the Shintoism book, or you can also ask for prayer and it'll respond to you.
Right. Really?
As a machine learning system.
and it's like a robot.
It's a robot.
There.
Yeah.
I could kind of relate to that a little bit because sometimes you don't want judgment.
Correct,
And just speaking to a non-organic matter and just expressing whatever you want to something that has no feelings or any judgment about you, and then you could just spill yourself out. Like before you would go to a church and sit in that box. I don't know what you call those boxes where you have the priest on the other side.
I know what you mean, though.
Yeah, and then you have to talk about confessional, and you have to tell him all this, but then you have to like see him in the face afterwards, right? After you spill the guts out on all the sins that you've done, and it's a bit awkward, right?
Right, exactly.
And I think more and more that as people are getting used to social media and being anonymous in some way, that people retract from like these human interactions, in a closer level. Close, I mean like on a visible level, and rather do it on a non-organic matter, which allows them to like freely express more. So maybe it's not that bad to have like an AI priest or something, right?
We don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it turns out. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I completely agree with you. The judgmental part, or having to face somebody. And so then later on this month, I'm going to be sharing with how can you use data for the kingdom of God in the spiritual context? How is that used? And so I'll have some fun sharing with people about that as well.
Right.
Because I think we have to think about these things. It's different. We can't just leave that to the side and say it's only for business. It's for life.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it should be. It's going to be part of everything. Yeah, everything in part of life. And I mean, I think even religion can have a little bit of an upgrade from technology, right?
Exactly.
And because now you have this kind of antiquated kind of system where you go to a church and then you have a priest and then you have all these like old teachings, which doesn't sound relatable anymore. And I think over time that those texts need to get some kind of improvement or upgrade. I'm sure the priests are doing their job of like making it more relatable these days. But I think technology can like actually add a new layer to even make it more relatable for people or kind of accessible.
I feel similar. I mean, it's the way we deliver the message, the way we connect with people changes. We'll get into another discussion, a separate, about the truth or the foundational text and what have you. But the way we connect has changed for sure, right?
Yeah.
It's been a long time in human history since before we had everyone from all over the world being able to speak together like this, and when you broadcast this out, people all over the world can take a look at it.
Yeah.
And my son just published a book last night on smash words. It took him 17,000 words. It took him several months to write and publish and everything, and he put it up. But now, he published it in the U.S. from here in Singapore, and it'll be available and what have you. So I think that sharing is really good as a creator.
Yeah.
We haven't had that in a while. But on the other hand, how do you make sure that you're sharing to the right people, sharing in the right way, sharing in a way that connects, even for your audience, for this audience, what data are they sharing that shows what they're interested in? And my son also did that type of research. Okay, who would be interested in this? What's going to connect with them?
Yeah. Yeah,
So-
it's kind of like the same with the ads in the world. How do you find the right target? The age range of people or themes that people are really interested in. And I think, was it you? I think I read some passage in your book. I think was about like Will Smith. Doing all the data analysis of what movies that he should be partaking in.
That's
Because
right.
so I think that should be the same with any content that's going to be going out there, right? So if you're an author, you want to write something, you want to have all the data necessary ready to be able to write something that connects to the people that he wants to, and he knows where to publish it and whatnot.
Exactly. It can help. Will Smith used it. That's right, to pick out what movies, what genre, how should it end, and so forth, so that it would be a blockbuster whenever he was in a movie.
Right.
He was very data driven.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's a very, I think that's the way it should be, and going to be, going forward for any type of business or, film or music or anything, right?
Right. And it makes sense, right? Like if you were playing a chess game, you would want to know what your opponent was doing. You'd want to understand exactly how you move your pieces too, and what would happen next.
Yeah.
So then it makes sense for us to use data to try to figure out, okay, what's happening outside? What's the environment telling me? So that I can make the right next move.
I mean, it's always been done in baseball, right? All these stats.
That's right.
Before all this computing and stuff, we would start talking about big data and stuff. I mean, they've been doing it for the longest time. And that's why it remains to be the most geeked out sport there is, right?
Exactly.
And I'm sure there's a lot of that happening all over different sports at the moment. I practice jujitsu.
You do?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, okay.
And
I studied that a little while when I was a
really?
kid.
Yeah. And so I'm sure there's a lot of people dissecting videos of like the past tournaments that people were in and try to understand a lot. But I mean, same thing as like boxing or any of the other sports, like combat sports, because you need to understand more and more about your opponent so that you can fight better. You can adjust your fighting style, your game, all these things.
Exactly right. And even in the e-sports now, some of the best, there's been a couple coaches that have come out and said that the way they got their players to the championship was by studying the data of the competitors.
Right.
When, how did they hit, what did they, and looking at lots of data points to see, and then coaching their players on what were their strengths and where the opponent's weaknesses were.
Yeah.
So data driven is coming more and more
Sure. I guess it's more, being more accessible because everything's digitized now. So you can you can capture those information as opposed to like writing them down or going through videos and slow motion videos and trying to gather those kind of data, right?
That's right. And the best will use that data. The best coaches, for example, will use that information. So it's the capture, but then the discipline to use.
Right. And you're an assistant professor of NUS, National University of Singapore, and how do you like teach your students about the relationship with this coming big data analysis and machine learning and the world that they will be entering in the next generation?
Well, I have a lot of fun teaching. First of all, I mean my mom was a teacher. My dad was a businessman. So I like to put those two things together.
I see.
And so coming from business, I joined National University of Singapore in 2012. And they had wanted to have business people come into the classroom to give a unique perspective to the students. So to bring together good theory, but also good execution and to share what is going on. And so I teach a couple classes. One is called Intelligent Systems Deployment. And this class is about cognitive processing by computers.
Cognitive.
Yes. Having my students understand what it takes to get a computer to think. Now, in the sense of human thinking. So if you look at a regular system, it's difficult to have it think about things because it just will execute a program. It says, you write it, okay, if this happens, then that. That's typical programming. But intelligent systems would take it more like, I would like to do this, and so let's make this happen. So there's some sort of self-impetus to the machine, which is what humans have. I want to study, and so I will. Because I have some desire, I have something I want to achieve. And so the intelligent systems deployment class is about how far we are from having computers as real thinking machines and what are the steps that are necessary for us to get there, the frameworks, the capabilities, the multi-agent systems, etc., that all need to come together to provide really good sensory of the environment and really good calculations about how to achieve a particular objective. For people, it's like, oh, I want to graduate from school. Well, that's my objective, but why? And so then I also teach them a bit the realities that we're very far away from that because we don't have the math for behavior, belief. We don't have the math for desires, and we don't have the data. Like we have data on what someone did, where they were, walking in Google Maps, maybe Amazon, what you purchased. But it's not so clear as to why. We don't have that in a database yet, right? So because
and people could be in a very mental state at that point, right? Which is probably not consistent with their daily habitual activities.
Right, exactly. Or they could be buying a gift. You buy something that looks like a gift card for your mom. Okay, so then how does Amazon know that? Because they say, would you like to add a note? And you write in there, this is a gift. Hey, mom, happy birthday, right? So obviously you've given that data. The why is there. But what's not clear is, so why are you sending a gift card? Why didn't you fly there to see your mom? All those context points are still missing.
And or even when you notice something, you just said, hey mom, and the thing that flashed in my mind was, oh, I forgot to buy my nephew's birthday present, right?
That's right.
Right. And then I'll go to Amazon and purchase it. So the machine wouldn't really be able to detect that, right? Because you said you were talking about like an Amazon gift, that I translated that to me buying my nephew's present, and what are the choices that I would make to buy those things. I mean, it's very hard to capture all that.
Exactly. It's so much data that we have in our heads that's not yet in the system. But what we do anticipate, though, is to have us come into the office in the morning, and the computer will say, welcome, Tanaka. I've already answered 30 of your emails. And by the way, these 15, I've written an answer for you, but I hope you'll review first because I want to make sure.
Yeah.
And it's your nephew's birthday.
Right.
I've already selected several gifts. Which one would you like to pick?
Yeah.
And would you like to take him out for laser tag like you did last year? You know, the computer could put all those things together, but we're at the beginning stages of this revolution, evolution, whatever you might call it, where there's opportunities to delight using systems, but we have to have the purpose, the reason, and the people to know how to program all this stuff.
Yeah. And where are we on that? I mean, you know, general AI, people say it's like 50 years away. You know, it could be even more than that. Whereas like your, you know, specific AI stuff where, you know, you play chess or Go or, you know, doing some simple or more complicated, you know, machine learning stuff is becoming a lot more, you know, kind of available to us these days. I mean, you know, it's a huge, very different, you know, I guess, or is it a different, you know, scientific approach to these two tasks?
Yeah, let's talk about Alphago. You know, it won, right? It was able to beat the Go master. Very complex game, requires creativity, at least as what we always thought. And here comes a computer that can consistently win. What Alphago had was critical information. It had a full picture of the rules. It understood the rules, and they weren't changing. It understood exactly what moves it could make. But it also could see perfectly the moves that its opponent made. And then it went through thousands, millions of games to try to look at all the different combinations and what would work, what wouldn't work, right?
And they're doing it in like milliseconds.
And then do exactly high-speed compute. And then you come back to DeepMind, the company that made Alphago.
Right.
And you read about, hey, they're running out of money. They didn't achieve earnings and what have you, right? The CEO is challenged. And if you go into the business environment and you say, okay, let's implement Alphago for your business. Then the business person is like, they're very excited. Yes, let's go ahead. And they say, okay, show us exactly the rules. Well, some companies have the rules down, some standard procedure. Okay, now give us every single move that you could make and the cost. Now, all of a sudden, most companies lack costing information about all the activities in their business, right? Then next, now show me all your competitors' moves. And that's where 99% of the businesses are done. Because they're not going out and looking at, I advertise, so what did my competitor do? I put this on sale, what did my competitor do? Why did my customer buy my product versus not the competitors or vice versa? They don't capture all that. It's not in a database. So what AlphaGo had to win is missing, not because the algorithm's wrong, but because businesses don't capture the data necessarily.
Right. Well, it wasn't really designed to make money just playing Go, right? I mean, and they needed to design something that really had a business application to it. And on top of that, you know, be able to figure out, you know, how can I reduce costs or how can I create more revenue for those businesses, right? And I guess, you know, if you're building something out at a pure intellectual interest and love for what you're doing, you're not really, maybe you're not thinking about money. You know, maybe is that maybe, you know, a possible you know, thing that's happening is like, is there not enough like business people thinking, okay, I'm going to make this thing and this will help this company do, you know, various sorts of cost cuttings or revenue creation methods.
Possibly. I mean, Alphago is a game of two things: a position, getting your pieces in the right place, and attrition, taking over from the other opponent's pieces, right? Well, it's like business too. Remember Michael Porter's 5 forces: position, price, etc., right? And so if I can position my business in the right place, I can make sure, is it the right part of the mall, right? I can make sure to get the customers. But then also if I capture that customer, I can make my other opponents not have as much, lose market share, right? So I think that's where the AlphaGo creators were kind of thinking, is that they could extend this into business because Go is like business. I need to position myself. I need to capture market share. Hey, let's use the same model. But
Right.
what was again missing was the inputs. We don't have. I hope that businesses will begin to business leaders will begin to understand. Hey, I need to take more time to understand and assess and collect data from the environment, and I can now in ways I never was able to before. But I have to be very purpose driven about it. Like you said, if it's just about cost cutting, maybe they won't do it. If they can demonstrate there's revenue earnings, maybe they'll take it. They'll do it as well. But then it's hard to find real good examples of it.
What about like financial tools? So like, you know, I've been in the hedge fund space for a while, and you know, obviously what I was doing was very, you know, human driven stuff. You know, we didn't really use algorithms or program trading for what we do. You know, just simply go, but maybe a lot of it could have been, you know, digitized, right, in some way, because we gathered corporate information and made prediction on whether this company would go through get out of a distress situation or not. And you know, a lot of the times I was asking, you know, S&P or Bloomberg and all these companies to give me, you know, like data sets so that I can analyze it, you know, in Excel that I made, so I could just plug it in and then have, you know, Excel calculate, you know, certain metrics for me. But most of that thing wasn't really available, and you know, the data sometimes weren't accurate. You know, if I had to compare what Bloomberg showed as, you know, balance sheet numbers compared to the company's disclosure, sometimes it didn't match, right? So you have like veracity issues with the data, and then also when it comes to, you know, getting the metrics I want, you know, they might not have the data to put into Bloomberg. They might have had it in the disclosure, but it wasn't in Bloomberg or S&P. So, you know, all these things, I mean, it was very difficult to automate a lot of the processes. In the end, I kept doing, you know, the same thing, just go to the disclosure and then pulling numbers from there manually, right? And I could never, you know, do that analysis on a faster.
Right.
And also then, you know, I wanted to know what my competitors were doing as well. But this data should be available because, you know, if a company bought shares in a company, it should show that which SPV they used, and they consistently used similar SPVs for buying things. But you know, it was hard to pick that up because you know, there's no system that connects all that things, right? So you know, you're always trying to beat the market, right? And you want to be in there before your competitor, and especially if it's a situation where, you know, everybody's looking at the same thing, because it's a hot company that people are looking. You want to be in there before everybody else, and you want to do the analysis faster. You want to make sure that you're in there beginning, not actually buying it at the top.
That's right. Yeah.
So like there weren't any of these tools available. I don't think there still is. You know, and for me, it was like I've been in that industry for like 18 years, and there hadn't been that much innovation that happened, you know, over that time. So, you know, those were the things that I always kind of wished I had, but you know, I'm still not there yet.
That's true. I mean, if you look at financial data and using the machine learning algorithms to try to sort that out, there's a couple problems right off the bat. Like you said, number one, the data's kind of messed up in between the sources. Different sources will provide different data and different consistency. But second is, if you try to program based on economics 101, let's say, some economic theory, but then you read in the newspaper that this bank managed, or how should I say, led the currency, or took positions in a certain currency and made the pricing be what it was, not necessarily following economic theory, but because they were a market maker. And then you look at the LIBOR scandal that occurred a couple of years ago, and you go back into the computer and say, oh, I want to program you to look at, you know, the savings and deposits and the interest rates, and that's what the LIBOR calculates out. But you realize that it was being manipulated. Then all that data was actually wrong. Like if you look at the LIBOR, you can't study that data because the banker, what they woke up for and had for breakfast was what the price was.
Right.
So
It was decided over a cocktail the night
exactly.
before, right?
Okay. And either way, it's not going to be a great way to figure out what it'll be next, right? Like the traditional economic forces and other things didn't necessarily always come into play.
Yeah.
So then as long as we understand the limitations, I think there's what you've mentioned is important. There are certain limitations right now. We shouldn't oversell what artificial intelligence can do. Otherwise, business leaders will get disheartened and say, well, I invested in this. Hey, data scientist, how come you didn't deliver me to Tanaka that automated report? You know, it's just excuses again and again.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think, the data that is collected is still not stored in the right way, right? And it's all over the place, and it's not categorized or anything. And also, you mentioned that in a book about, business strategies and how to collect that data. And I think, for data scientists to gather the right data, they need to go to a source where it's clearly, like organized so that they can pull it. And right now it's so scattered and you can't really validate the authenticity of the data. So it makes it very difficult, to, use as a viable product.
And I think that it's the winners going to be in this time period, the ones that figure out how to get it organized. The winners will also be the ones that figure out how to leverage crowdsourced information, like StockTwits and others that let investors come in and put their position, share what they're thinking about and what have you. As much as that information becomes available. What can you do with it? How? And I think, like I said, we're at the beginning stages of bringing these things together beyond just what we always had in the Bloomberg terminal.
Right. Yeah. I think the Bloomberg terminal definitely needs an upgrade. It still looks like MS-DOS.
Right.
I always had a problem with that Bloomberg terminal. I mean, it has good data, but it was not very accessible data, and you can't really extract much out of it. Right. And it all stays in. I mean, for obvious reasons, it stays within Bloomberg. But that's another thing too. Like I believe in open source, and providing information. People probably want to monetize that, but if you put a paywall on in front of it, it's very difficult for more innovation to happen, right? And how can we kind of go beyond thinking about just monetizing these things to more of a let's innovate this thing faster and then they share more.
Well, you bring up a nice point. At the university, we see ourselves at National University of Singapore, especially School of Computing, as a place where innovation should happen, because we're in place to understand what's possible, to try new things. We're given funding by corporates and other entities to look into and try things out, and to have 50, 100 students come and play and see what it's like in projects. So there is a space for that, and it's a opportunity that companies should know is open. And the great thing about Singapore is how supportive organizations are here, whether from the government side, from Monetary Authority of Singapore, or over at the Institute for Banking and Finance. They're all entities that are willing to not just talk about innovation, but also support it.
Yeah.
And so if companies are looking at, well, I have this particular problem, how do I, get a solution to it? In particular, IMDA, there's a nice website they have there on innovation. Companies can go and look at and upload an innovation project they're interested in. And other companies will come and try to assist that. Or they should feel free to come over to School of Computing and be like, hey, I have a project I'm interested in. If it's deep tech, then doing research on it, or if it's more applied and I want to try something out now. And different ways to approach that, for sure.
Yeah.
There's support. You're not on your own.
Yeah,
ecosystem. Think
right.
ecosystem.
It's true. I mean, I visited the GovTech here as well, and they build products with open APIs so that people can plug and play with their things, which I think is amazing because I haven't really been to any other country that has this kind of initiative.
Exactly.
They just build things for the public and say, okay, use it.
Right. And it's been great. Like Payla now, that open banking API made it so that we can be a digital economy. I mean, I can leave my wallet at home because I can just tap with my phone to the bus and everything. Right.
It's true. I haven't walked around with cash in a long while.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and certainly, the banks here seem to be, pretty open for innovation. I mean, they have innovation hubs everywhere, and creating iBanking, progressively, in my view. I mean, coming from Japan, I mean, it took a long time for them to get everything, move into the whole iBanking world, and still Japan's a very cash-heavy society. Where here is seem to be diminishing.
Yeah. Definitely the case. Even I paid for my soybean milk at Tiongbaru Market. They make this one of the best fresh soybean milks is on the second floor of Tiongbaru Market here, and the auntie that works there, I go there about 5:30 in the morning,
right? And
they're already all set, and I forgot my cash. I had U.S. dollars. I didn't have Singapore dollars. And I was like, oh, I forgot my money. And then she pointed to the QR code. No problem. We accept. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
So I got my couple soybean milks and such there and took the QR code and did Payla and done,
Yeah. It's
everywhere.
Yeah, it's everywhere. I mean, not just Singapore. I mean, China has been like the most innovative country in this space for the time being, and now if I go to China, which is a little bit difficult for tourists because every payment is like WeChat Pay, WeChat Pay, Alipay. If you don't have it, you can't pay for anything. I was out with my colleagues from China, and we went to a restaurant. The menu wasn't even available. You had to download it onto your WeChat, and then you had to pay with your WeChat Pay. And everything was seamless, but for me, like I don't have a bank account in China, so I couldn't pay for it. But I try to give cash to my colleagues, and like I don't want that stuff because I can't even use it anymore.
Oh no.
Yeah. But but speaking of China, I mean, I don't know if you're gathering a lot of intel on what the Chinese government is doing, but I mean, obviously they're doing a lot of projects on trying to gather data on their citizens, whether it be financial or kind of the smart nation type of things, where I think one of the projects they're doing is like social responsibility things, program where they kind of monitor what people are doing and then limiting their activities if they do something bad or something. It's a very to me it's a very like kind of Big Brother strange program, but it is a way. It seems like having cameras all over the place and things is coming the norm for how to build a smart nation, right? And you speak about smart nations quite often. And what is the progress that's happening here in Singapore?
Oh wow. Tremendous. So first of all, I've always said that Singapore is like the original smart nation from a policy perspective, because your needs, your foundational needs of safety, water, housing are all pretty much taken care of. And economically, from a policy perspective, you can get a reasonable meal for a very low cost. Or if you want to pay, the sky's the limit, you can also do that too. But if you try to drink alcohol or other things that aren't so beneficial, you have to pay extra for it. So it's a pretty neat, that's a smart economy already.
Right.
In New York, on the other hand, if you want a reasonable meal, it can cost the same amount as something bad for you too.
Right.
So that's not very good. Technically though, you can see the benefits of the technology implementation here. From how the bus systems run, because they get to leverage our tap in, tap out information and have been for a long time.
Yeah.
So just that basic data point, right, can tell you, are my buses over or under capacity? You know, and being a smart nation is all about how can you share the scarce resources with your citizenry in an optimal way. That's what a good smart nation is. And we were talking about it earlier, right? I mean, Singapore is almost like a model for public transportation, for housing, safety. All those things seem to be well optimally shared in a sense.
Yeah.
That's my first view.
Yeah.
And by using data, by collecting information, by setting the expectation that we will be collecting information here about movements and spending and what have you.
Yeah.
It's very good for, and used in a proper way, it's good for setting policy and sharing those scarce resources.
Yeah. Yeah. And so far I haven't, all those transportation data they've been collecting, but what other types of data has the government collecting in terms of, the people's like mobilities and
mobility is exciting. We have a little driverless bus that goes around campus, and it can actually travel all the way out here. The government recently set up a driverless mobility zone that includes One North and some of Clementi, the university area.
Okay.
And there's a couple of those locations throughout Singapore. But this bus goes around. Right now it's in test mode, so it's just the human reviewer.
Okay.
They're not operating the bus, and the bus goes automatically.
Yeah.
But it collects information about the environment, and how it should drive, and what have you. The other is, of course, the recent initiatives by the Housing Development Board to issue smart housing.
Okay.
So smart metering in terms of electricity and how things relate to, especially the air conditioning use and temperature control. Like that's one of the biggest spenders here.
I see.
But also then, presence in the house. Being able to put sensors in the various rooms that are not just motion but also heat sensors. For example, if you're sitting reading a book in the living room, the motion sensor fails because after a while you're not moving enough.
Yeah, right.
So then what the smart housing looks like is having both the heat sensor and motion sensor, so it still knows you're there, and leave the lights on, leave the air conditioner on until that sense moves. And so those smart houses that are coming out here will provide even more granular information about how to set and control air conditioning and such, so they're not running when no one's home, or the temperature's not set to an optimal way, and what have you. Those, and IoT is of course a big part of this. So Internet of Things, which is where you have a sensor that's placed in order to receive inputs about the environment. It has to be purpose driven though, because if you just put a temperature sensor someplace, you're getting the temperature all the time, but for what?
Yeah, exactly.
At what granularity, at what timing? So these type of initiatives need to have the thought behind it of what are we trying to solve? Now we can go and put sensors in the environment, and if we solve that, great. And maybe some more information will come out so we know more. So I always like projects that involve data that have a return on investment at the end.
Of course.
It has to be measurable. You have to have a outcome. And so smart nations, again, here in Singapore in particular, are the focus is let's put sensors up around throughout Singapore. Right now there's even sensors on the light poles. So as you go through, you'll see that if you look at your phone, you'll see lots of different Wi-Fi points as you go, and wireless SG, for example. Well, that gives good information about who's using wireless, how much bandwidth do they need. Those type of information is again good to provide citizens with better services at those points, as well. So everything is about how do we.
I always believe that for the if there's a purpose for the betterment of humanity, it's great. I mean, if you can reduce the amount of electricity that you use in your house to, fight climate change,
exactly,
those like grander vision, I'm really for. but I guess it's always the matter of like how you use that data, and and preventing falling into the wrong hands. So
That's right.
and this is like always a part of like technology and humans, is that technology don't fail unless the humans do, right?
That's right. Technology, you can is like water. You can either drink it or drown in it.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Technology is
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and in a country well run like Singapore, I could trust the government that they're using the data for proper reasons, and but if these initiatives happen all around the world, and you do have countries like Venezuela or certain other countries where you have dictatorships and all that. I mean, it's very difficult for you to give up your privacy, just for the sake of betterment of control, right?
Right,
And
right.
and is there any framework as human beings that we can put into place where these data don't fall into the wrong hands?
Oh, so you're talking about cybersecurity in terms
Yeah.
of controlling where data goes, and then also privacy in terms of what people share and how it's used.
Yes.
So first, from a privacy perspective, privacy, in my view, is a social contract. For example, we believe that Facebook won't share things beyond our circle when we put pictures on and we set certain privacy settings, right?
Yeah.
We have a social contract in a sense, but it's not written, by the way. The real contract says Facebook can do whatever you want with your data,
Yeah,
right?
exactly, yes.
But our social contract is, we know that you won't take this and show our enemy,
Yeah.
or use it against us some way.
Yeah.
Same with all IoT sensors or Smart Nation. We would have a social contract that, although you know what time I got home because the sensor went off and showed that I got home, right?
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be used as a way of harm, right? It would be used to make sure my air conditioning bill was less. That was
Yeah.
kind of the social contract, right? And I think that as long as companies and people, businesses, and governments understand that social contract and adhere to it, then this sharing of data for mutual benefit will continue.
Yeah.
But it's when things like Cambridge Analytica and the data is then exposed as having been used to
Yeah.
do certain things that social contract gets broken.
Yes.
And then people say, okay, wait,
Yeah.
this is a problem. What's very funny about Facebook is that in 2012, you might recall that Eric Snowden came out and shared, look, everything you put there is being used by the National Security Agency. And they're sweeping up all the data around Skype, everything you use, your phone calls, whatever it is, they're going to collect, right? And Facebook subscriptions increased because that wasn't the issue.
Right.
Like, it's true. If you have nothing to hide, then why hide? That type of thing. And people were like, never mind. I know that even whoever has access, fine.
Yeah.
But it was when this third party that no one, who are they? That doesn't sound like a legitimate organization.
Right. Sure.
And now they're out of business and everything. Got the data, then that became a problem for Facebook. So governments and everyone have to consider, if you do need some entity to analyze this data, if you have to figure out the social contract first, and then the cybersecurity part second, right? So cybersecurity, how do you control data? It starts with culture, actually.
Okay.
I mean, businesses hire interns, right? And eventually you say to the intern, hey, can you analyze this data for me?
Yeah.
Okay, so what that whole conversation starts from the culture side. Should I share? What type of data would I share? Should I encrypt it before the intern gets it as well? And yes, I want to have it looked at quickly, but how much should I trust with them? And if something were exposed, would it pass the New York Times test? Which is, if it shows up in the New York Times, can you still show mom the paper?
Yeah.
And that's the aspect of culture that's so critical. So then companies need to back up with that and say, now do I invest in the right policies, procedures, training, and technical side? because you can put all the technical capabilities in the world, have stuff in the cloud and private, secure, et cetera, and someone goes with a USB stick who has the rights, downloads it, and then takes it to their son's computer where they're downloading whatever type, and then the data's gone, right?
Or sold into the black market.
Right, it's sold in the black market, and that's just bad culture, bad behavior, right?
Right.
Never the technical side of things.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
So both are important.
Yeah. but is there? Do you think that there should be a opt out, option for people? I mean, it's still, we live in a democracy, right?
Yeah.
And we do have a right not to be followed or provide data to our daily lives, even though it might be very meaningless data. Do you think we should have something like that?
The first question is, do we have a right?
Do we?
Because that's a hypothesis.
Yeah.
I mean, if you consider what is the purpose, I think it comes down to purpose, like we talk about, right? Any state will say we have a purpose to protect people, right? And to protect the infrastructure and to protect et cetera. Things have to be protected. So how do you do that in a data-rich environment in a time when social media is being used to convert people to do bad things or convert them to do good things, right?
Yeah.
So isn't it the government's responsibility? Would we say they were falling down on the job if they didn't look at and understand the threats accurately?
Right.
And then something happens, right? At that point, then everyone would say, oh, wow, we need to. And so after 9/11, this was a perfect example. After 9/11 in the U.S., Congress passed this law that basically said that the government can now officially look at the citizens' data for the purpose of protecting from threats, right?
Right.
And it's still on the books. No, there hasn't been some big protest or what have you. Some people have said, oh, maybe this shouldn't be done. But others have said, oh, I want to be protected, And so how you can't opt out of that, right? Because it's legislated into that.
Yeah.
I think so. Then the question becomes, like you said, should you be able to opt out? I think for commercial reasons, possibly. You may want to be able to opt out because you don't want a grocery store coupon or something like that, or to be targeted with advertising, for example, in a certain way.
Yeah.
And that, again, is caused because the advertiser and the company that got the data used it the wrong way, broke the social contract.
Right.
Just because I decided to shop at fair price doesn't mean that I should no longer receive coupons from cold storage, because even the demographics different, the cost is different, everything, right?
Yeah.
But the company has to step back and say, okay, don't just make it a rule-based if this then that type of system. Let's look at who is Keith Carter. Why did he shop there, and understand that more before executing on what could be an erroneous coupon strategy or marketing strategy, right?
Right.
When they do execute a bad strategy, then I feel like, hey, how did they get the data? Why am I getting this spam, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then we get pissed off.
Yeah.
So what you're really talking about is opting out of companies, commercial organizations in particular, that approach us in inappropriate ways using our data.
Yeah. I guess trust is two ways, right?
Yeah.
And if we're giving you the data, then it is your obligation to keep it safe. Give me the better ads,
Yes.
or give me the better governmental service
Right.
that I need. All right.
That's right.
And so it shouldn't be like the other side thinking this is my right to collect data because you're using a free service, or you're
Correct.
living in this country, you're paying taxes, but still the government tend to think, okay, because you live here, I have the right to gather information, but it's not always like that, right? And then it's kind of a way for the citizens or the customers to say, you're taking my data, put it to the best work possible.
Exactly. You have to earn the right, and you have to keep earning the right.
Yeah.
It's not a given.
Right.
That I completely agree with you on.
Yeah.
And you can lose the right if you piss people off and send stuff that is not correct, or make wrong suggestions, or pigeonhole people into the wrong space as well, or even embarrass them with their advertisements too.
Right.
It's so coming to it is companies need to understand actionable intelligence.
Yeah.
Actionable intelligence is about the right information in the right person's hands at the right time.
Yeah.
In order to improve outcomes. See, the reason we like Google Maps, like we like Google Maps,
Yes.
right?
Can't live without them.
Can't live without it. And we like it because we like it when it gives us on-time instructions.
Doesn't make us drive into the traffic.
That's right. Exactly.
Or give the cab driver the wrong address or
Exactly.
the directions. Right?
The wrong exactly. We like it when it's right.
Yeah.
And we're so used to it that we actually get angry when it's wrong, even though it's free.
Yeah.
As well. And so from that side, we're willing also to make it better by sharing with it where we came from, how long it took for us to get there, all those things, because we do feel like a reciprocal relationship. We don't even think about the reciprocal relationship, to be honest, right? But we don't like spam.
Yeah.
Because it sends us stuff that's not relevant to us. It was not relevant nor timely,
Right.
And so companies that are looking at using data about can Tanaka buy this TV, and they send it to you, and then you're like, hey, why you send this to me now when I just bought the TV last week,
Right.
and I didn't have this 10% discount? Now I'm double angry. Right. So they have to really change the way they think about approaching the consumers with the data that they get, and be very responsible with it.
Right. So traditionally, there weren't any particular roles assigned to this kind of position, but you do mention like a chief data officer. Is that kind of the role that is taking the helm of this action?
Exactly. Yes. Companies have gone and hired data scientists in a sense, or rushed to that. It was the cool thing to do these past several years, and what intended to. So there are new roles. You have to have people that can do data visualization. You have to have great analytics in terms of looking over the marketplace. And companies are being challenged in that they can no longer use the old segmentation model. This person looks like this, so let's offer that. We expect individual, very personalized advertising now, because Instagram gives us very personalized interests.
Yeah.
And Apple iTunes gives us personalized music selection.
Yeah.
And so we're expecting now that Harvey Norman is going to do the same thing, right? Because everyone else does it, right?
Right.
Amazon gives us very specific things. And so that's why companies, if you look at I'll get to that in a moment. So that's why companies need to hire people that can look at data, but also have a good business background to know how to, and psychological background and data visualization background to make it easy to understand, to make it psychologically right, whatever advertisements that's sent out, that know the business so they understand the impact and the costs and the benefits that are there, the value proposition for the customer, and ultimately the data scientists that can pull the things together. So I call this organization now a little bit different. It was never about data, and it was never about science. It was all about answering the questions the business had. Thank you. And so having a chief answer officer, having lead that organization is a role that could be in place, where the expectation of a head of sales is to provide sales. Head of marketing is to do great marketing. Head of data is to provide data. No, it was supposed to be, we always wanted just the answers.
Yes.
And so head of, the answer organization. And that would put a different tension, a different motivation to the people in that organization. They're not just to spend all the time scientifically experimenting. At the university, we can do that.
Yeah.
But in a commercial organization, in a trading, a hedge fund, you need answers. Now, like you said, I want to be in the position earlier, win faster.
Yeah.
And I need the answer now, right? It was never show me the Bloomberg spreadsheet. Show
Yeah.
me the answer. Do I buy or not?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. We just don't need like a complement of data, right? We need
Exactly.
We need the answer, and then and we talked about this, but the ROI on why we're actually gathering this data and analyzing it as well, right? And
Exactly. Yeah. What's the return? Have I, now that I've gotten answers, did I take a position? Or now that I gave the consumer this unique value proposition, did they buy? Were they happy about it? And what's neat is that we're now at a time where consumers are providing whether they were satisfied. I got value for money or not, or
Yeah.
my mom really liked this. Here's a picture of her smile. All that data is there. But and consumers place it there. Funny enough, too, like
Yeah.
we voluntarily put it there,
Yeah.
even for free. It's work, right?
Yes, sure.
But yet companies are not yet positioned, don't have necessarily the skill sets to go and bring that in and delight the customer, or
Right.
take a smarter position in a trade.
Right, right. And is that part of like what you're teaching at the university as well? Because there's no, as you said, there were no positions like this before,
Right.
and you probably have people who are good at computer science and then people who are good at business. But it's very hard to find people who could do both.
Yeah.
And I think we need more and more of these type of people coming out of universities that we can hire
Yes.
into our organizations, and because it's very hard to teach people who are very established about how to do business or vice versa. So we need more talent in this space, and I think this is like a new job in the future as well, right? To have
That's right.
more and more of these people out there.
Exactly. There's all new jobs being created. This is a time of greater wealth creation and greater job creation than ever before.
Yeah.
We need so many people to look at information and synthesize it together. And so the type of class I teach, in addition to the intelligent systems deployment class, the other class is financial technology solutions. So
Okay.
we look at what banks are, what insurance companies are, in their core. What do they provide? What were they meant to provide? What did we as consumers expect they would do, or as bankers, or business people, or what have you? Realizing that at the fundamental core, they distribute money.
Yeah.
They take it in, they mark it up, and send it out,
Exactly.
and vice versa,
Yeah.
and provide a safe area for it
Right.
for some time being,
Yeah.
right? That said, then how do you delight the customer, whether it's B2B or B2C? And my students are looking at creating solutions around that. So they've surveyed the market. They've seen bank accounts you can set up in just a few minutes. What needs to be taken further for that? They've seen how you plan for retirement, but can that be done even better?
Yeah.
They look at what is it that needs to run a business, and how can business owners, especially SMEs, get a better handle on their cash flow, and in exchange for that, get a better loan rate and what have you. Because the risk, if I can know it a bit earlier as a
Yeah.
bank, I can reduce my risk rate as well, right? Or at least get a more precise reading on what it should be. And so these type of mashups of data sets are what's really going to be able to drive the economy, make lending more efficient, make savings more purposeful,
Yeah.
and make financial services a much more delightful industry than it is today.
Yeah, a lot of the topics I hear on big data and fintech is the credit scoring.
Yes.
And now, it was traditionally it was always based on their previous payment history, or how they spent their money on various different things. But now you have so much other social elements that you can bring into credit scoring, and no longer you would probably call it credit scoring anymore. And you could take data from your social media,
Yes, yes.
or you could take references from people commenting on who you are, and
Right.
knowing, right? You could be a really a huge asshole, but you're paying money on time,
Yes,
or
yes.
it could be the other way around, where you could super nice guy, very credible in society, but he's always late for payment. Right?
Well, now you touch on something that brings all these topics we've discussed together, because you almost have to create your own social credit, right? So let's say that you decided to completely opt out, you have no social profile.
Right.
Now you can only be scored based on your past payment history, which could be good, good or bad. Let's say it's perfect, but still there's a question, algorithmically, will this person continue to be able to pay?
Yeah.
What's their health lifestyle like?
Yeah, exactly.
If the person eats steak every night and smokes cigars and what have you, but is completely offline, you don't know.
Yeah.
Now, comparatively, a person who has a social presence shows where they go, shows that they check into the salad stop for lunch, and or
goes to the gym, or
goes to the gym, and or asleep at 10 o'clock, and their heart rate is perfectly fine,
Right.
throughout the day. They're the picture of health because they've shared all their data. So if you think of AIA Vitality, they have this program. It's the insurance company, AIA, and you can register and subscribe, and they actually, for a small subscription, if you take 10,000 steps, if you eat right, if you eat the healthy choice option, they'll actually give you coupons and for different things.
Yeah.
So they reward you for following a healthy lifestyle and sharing the data about that healthy lifestyle.
Right.
So bringing it together is, if we don't share, we could be at risk of not fitting in the future when we go for insurance, when we go for jobs even.
Yeah.
If we do share, we could actually be promoted, excited. Oh, wow, look at how they live their life. Look at what they do. Look at the decisions they make. Look how they manage their money.
Yeah.
And because they shared that with us now, so it's a very new environment that we're in.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
wow, what will it mean for our kids, right?
Yeah,
When they
exactly. That's what I always think about all the time. I mean, I've been brought up, in a generation where, I had a computer when I was, I don't know, in the mid or late, early 90s. And, the internet kicked in around that time when I was in high school. It's brought up in a very transitory kind of age. We're kind of used to technology, but still we were thinking about how do I rewind my cassette with my pencil, right?
Yeah, I remember those days. Yes,
or just twirl it around and then rewind or
Exactly.
something. so but our kids are definitely in the more complete digital age, where my son, when he was like already 2.5, was able to go through like YouTube and find his favorite video, get rid of the ads. When the mail comes in, he knew to like swipe up so that get rid of that. And he just completely knew how to use the iPad, right? And so he's gonna go through a completely different experience of this world, where data sharing is so normal. And data analytics is so normal that it's that's part of his life, and for me, looking at the generation that we're creating now, I don't even know how to educate. What's the best education for my kids anymore, right? And the progress that we've seen is incomparable to our parents' generation, where I wouldn't say it was static, but it had a growth. But not as exponential as we see now.
Well, jobs and kids, right? Like in years past, we used to take carpentry class and metalwork, metal shop, home economics, learn baking and everything, right? These days, and we were learning how to be makers, right? But then somehow school became very theoretical, like consume, learn how to, memorize this, and you have to master the theory of that, right? But now we're back to this maker economy, where if you make a podcast like this, you will be all over the world.
Yeah.
If you make a YouTube video, like my kids make stop motion for Legos, and
Oh, yeah? That's cool.
they get views all over the world, and in particular, for some reason, we were looking at the analytics from Vietnam, and they were like, "What? Why there?" You know, and so there's this aspect of education that will need to change, which is moving from memorizing and consuming facts in the history of the world to doing that, plus making the programs, making the insightful insights about data, making new ways that we can interact between humans and machines. We need everyone in this. We need everyone in this. And
Right.
even the youngest teenagers are able to go sit down, learn, and deliver things because the bar is really low right now.
Yeah.
You can go and learn how to be a creator. And I think those creators are going to be the ones that will, not to be too over the top, but rule the world in a sense.
Yeah, the bars definitely come down to get your whatever it is that you create, across the world in milliseconds.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You want to print a 3D model, you go, you have a 3D printer, you make a shape, and then all of a sudden you can print it 3D. You share it with someone in South America, they can print the same thing.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I was talking to a friend who's a DJ, and he was talking about how recording has changed quite a lot. You used to go into a studio and do all these recordings. Now you just have your laptop and it has basically most of the things that you really need to make it sound professional and just make music. So you don't even need money to pay for the studio time and all these musicians to make music for you. You can just do it by yourself and money. There's starting to be like less and less money in recording as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you can put it on SoundCloud or whatever and then distribute it anywhere in the world.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And then the companies, the organizations like SoundCloud are the new studios, and they're not handling one artist at a time, one session at a time, 5 sessions a day. They're handling millions of artists with billions of users, right? And all they need to do is take a small amount from each one. So it's all about scale now.
Yeah.
Where before it was, let's do things hand by hand. Now it's all scale.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just going to get better and better, I guess. Just at the beginning. And then now it's going to be more targeted, right? It's not just going to be a platform where people go in and then find what they want. It's going to be like, okay, this is what you need, and it's probably going to get smarter and smarter with more data that you give, right? The likes that you put on this music, and then probably curate it much better going forward. So,
and then becomes a challenge, right? Like, how do you expose people to things that they never liked?
Yes,
but it'd be nice if they hear.
Yeah.
And so you have.
I would say about the serendipity thing is lost.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do we encounter something, and then people too. So if you're always hanging out with the same type of people that have like-minded people, then you lose that factor of like somebody telling you, oh, this music is pretty cool.
Right.
And I find that more and more because now you spend so much time online with the people that you don't even know, but you just know that they like certain music or like certain films, and then you don't get to experience what else is there out in the world. And how do you create that on a program? Right?
And here's what's so strange, though, right? It's that we have been used to limitations. When you listen to the radio stations, you always hear the high rotation, high play.
Yeah.
There's, if you listen to the radio station, you'll hear one song from the album.
Yeah.
You hardly ever hear the 12 tracks that were there, right?
Right, exactly. And there was a whole story of like how the 12 songs were put together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like Genesis or all those Phil Collins. When he always had a story run through all the songs, right? And that's why we rewind with our pencil as well. But then we were used to those limitations. But now we can listen to music from everywhere, Sweden, wherever, bands we never heard about, but has music similar to Phil Collins or something that we had liked, and at least extend our range and listening interest. So I think the challenge also goes to our traditional media. The traditional radio stations, the traditional music stations, they've been under threat for a long time. Like people are just putting in MP3s or Bluetooth now, and that ends, stations in a sense. So where do they fit in this highly scalable, very individualized world when they're trying to broadcast to everybody one signal? It's almost incongruous. So at the same time as I say that this is a opportunity for us to create new jobs, on the other side, you can see that roles and jobs will go away.
That's an evolution of types of jobs too, right?
That's right.
Just as people actually don't work in factories to make cars anymore, right? And it's been replaced with automation. And people who used to do that before probably worked in agriculture, where now you don't really need that many people working in farms anymore. But at the same time, during that whole transitional time, there've been so many different types of jobs that have been created as well.
That's right.
And with all this like AI coming into place, I mean, there's so much fear that there's going to be jobs lost and they're going to take over and we have nothing to do. Just going to be haves and have-nots of like this AI, and then people who don't have access to, or being replaced by AI, and this huge divide, massive inequality in terms of income, and people being displaced left, right, and center. But at the same time, I mean, we right now we can't really be creative enough to think, okay, what else can we do with this AI that creates more jobs, or how do we live with AI that doesn't completely displace us, but make our lives much more efficient, that with that spare time that we're doing with our own job, we can add more tasks that we can do as well, right? Exactly right.
I mean, never in human history, never has there been a time when higher technology, better health, etc., caused less jobs. It's never been like that. Think about it. The jobs that went away. There's no horse and buggy repair shops in Singapore.
At least in Singapore.
That's right. There's none, and there's no more farming. There's no more. There's very little fishing that goes on an island, right?
Sure, exactly.
But yet, those were the top jobs back at the turn of the century here. Today, those jobs are all gone. Does it mean that 2/5 of the population, because the other jobs were banking, law, and trading, has 2/5 of the population been displaced? No way, right? This is one of the highest employability cities in the world. All new jobs, many more bankers and lawyers and traders than there ever were before, and roles to support those, accounting and everything else, right? So to say that all of a sudden new capability, new technology is going to have less jobs, it would be to say something that has never happened in human history. Like you have to be really bold to say that, right? Like there's no other. So then what will happen is what you just said. There are new jobs, but then policy-wise and education-wise, we have to be very careful about the conversion. For a time, you can, cut jobs, but if you don't give people a way to upskill, you don't give the companies knowledge of who to hire and how to use them, then you'll cut, but you won't have a way out. And so for a period of time, you would reduce your employability, but then, it would balance out later on. But you'd weaken your GDP as a nation. You'd weaken your positioning as a nation. The internal infrastructure would feel discomfort. And so what I like about Singapore so far, again, is that skills future. Wow. The frameworks, how companies should engage people. Of course, the funding in terms of getting the training and what have you. And at NUS, National University of Singapore, again, School of Computing, there's classes people can take to do data analytics, to learn about digital marketing, and at other institutions around Singapore too. Republic Poly has great courses as well, you know, and others. So it's not a matter of what training people should have. It's a matter of individuals thinking a bit about their life and saying, hey, what could happen next? What should I get myself upskilled on? And also the business owners being very, again, purpose-driven, saying, you know what, I've had this department of people here, and I don't want to let them all go. How can I anticipate 4 or 5 years from now how this could look so that I can, you know, really even do better as a company,
Right.
but also establish my people who have been so loyal to follow along with me on this journey. I think the best companies are going to be doing that.
That's interesting. You know, there's been you know, if you take the auto industry, where, you know, automation has displaced a lot of people who are working in factories. You know, let's say people who are in their like 50s, late 50s, coming near to retirement, and they get displaced by automation, and then, you know, unfortunately they have to work in retail. Maybe they're like flipping burgers. I mean, you know, how do we retrain people, you know, at a much I don't know, closer to, you know, the end of their careers, right? And, you know, they had a couple more years to go, 5, I don't know, maybe 6, 7 years more to go, and they wanted to, you know, their kids are out of the house now. This is the time for them to like save up money for their retirement, and all of a sudden they're displaced, right? I mean, how do we these are the types of people I worry about the most.
Me too.
Yeah.
That 40 to 60 range.
Yeah.
You know, where you're getting paid higher, but yet your productivity might not be the same as the 20-year-old, and especially on a pay basis, right?
Yeah.
And you already have so much family and other things and obligations that you can't take a lower pay easily, right?
Yeah.
And you have a lot of obligations, so you can't spend time to train easily either, right? And learn.
Yes.
Oh, you never did programming before, and you're in accounting. Well, now I'll do programming and accounting, you know.
Yeah, it's a bit hard. It's hard.
Yeah. You know, this is a very steep challenge as well. There are 3 things I think we ought to consider. Number 1 is, so before they got to that age, what should we have been doing? That's number 1. So it's hard to turn on a dime something that's taken a couple years to be built in place, right? We saw computers coming, we saw data coming. We now have a mismatch in roles. You can hardly hire a data scientist in Singapore.
Yes.
It's so hard. There's like 16,000 jobs that are open. If you look at just one job website, 16,000 in the space, right? And on the other side is, you know, this manufacturing place closed, so 300 people lost their jobs, and right? So the people are there, and the jobs are over here. How come we weren't, you know? So, and this is not just Singapore; it's everywhere, right? So, I believe that number 1, we had to anticipate a bit more. We have to then learning from this, we should anticipate what's coming next for the 30-year-olds, right? Second is that we need to set very good demand education. What I mean by demand education is have companies know what is it that they should be hiring for, how should they be delighting their customer, because they're not. They still close at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and there's no way for you to get customer service. But then Amazon is always available. Apple is always available. So you have these international competitors coming in. Are we competing at a local level with that international flair? So there's huge opportunity to delight the customer, like the competitors are. You know, and it would take, number 3, more jobs. So you have to build the supply. We have to build that capability to be able to anticipate, hey, I noticed that returns are spiking up on this. How can I delight our customers with data so that we can, you know, anticipate the return, be available, enable it, right? Amazon came in here, delivered Prime, and enabled 2-hour delivery.
Yeah. Amazing.
Wow. Right? So, and what did that do? It created jobs around delivery, right? It created new ways to look at data and anticipate what should be here. Because obviously, if it's in California or it's Washington, it can't get here in 2 hours. So they had to anticipate what people would want in this market.
Yeah.
All data, all analysis of what was happening in the marketplace, right? What job was that? And so that whole stack, number one, anticipating. Number two, being in a position to be able to teach companies what they should be doing to delight the customer, like Amazon has come in and done. Yeah. And number three, being able to build that supply so that companies can do it. You know?
Right.
Those are three things. And what what's great about Singapore so far, if you look at the Ministry of Trade and Industry, they have their focus for the next few years that does have a good forward look. You also see that as for demand, there are a lot of good workshops being put together by IMDA for companies to come and understand what's next in their industry.
Right.
And for SMEs, it's oftentimes free. And then for the third one, for demand, we mentioned Skills Future. Yeah. But I still think there's one missing piece in the Skills Future framework. In that, and there's an opportunity. Sometimes if you ask people, hey, have you heard about these courses? Are you spending time on them? You get, no, I didn't hear. I didn't know, you know. So there's still a lack of knowledge in the marketplace to these courses, number one. And number two, maybe a lack of freedom. Like our employers really encouraging their staff to go for these things. Yeah. Or saying, stay there and keep doing your current job. You know, don't take a half day or 3 days worth of training. So those are the fun. Sorry, a long answer to your question, but I hope complete.
No, it's definitely true. I mean, you know, I think we should, but it's still very difficult for corporations to predict the future and where their job is going. If they do that, they'll be, you know, very successful companies, and not all companies are successful. And, you know, maybe the answer is like, maybe we should have more consultants, you know, predicting the future and then trying to do evangelist work to get people more up to date on what's going on with, you know, emerging technologies.
Yeah, or at least an innovation hub inside of the company so they can see and test what's happening as well. Yeah. I think the other piece is that, like you said, companies may not see it. They have to consider doing business with a heart then as well. Yeah. As soon as there's a downtrend, you don't start by cutting people. You start by looking at some of the expenses. And how many companies have we seen where they cut however many people, but the executives are still eating steak dinners and wine and going to F1 and things like this? You know, it's
very in the financial industry.
Very incongruous, you know, activity. Sure. And so companies have to think through, how do I invest? And if I did that investment wisely, wouldn't that deliver even better business performance? Yeah. And I argue that it would, but then leadership, they have to get trained too.
Yeah, they got to get out of this short-termism, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what the shareholders are always looking at. It's like, okay, how much money can I make off of the shares of this company, you know, after this quarter, right? Yeah. And what it's done. And I think too many money is chasing after short-term profits, and I think we need a framework where that changes as well. You know, even from the company side and the investor side as well, right? Like, let's say like Unilever decided not to post their quarterly results anymore because they didn't want investors chasing after their quarterly results, and they wanted long-term investors, right? I mean, maybe that's one of the ways to do it. Right. You know, it lowers the disclosure of the company during the whole year, obviously, but you know, it attracts more people who believe in the vision of the company, the quality of the people that they employ, and the business that they do. I'm not trying to praise Unilever like that, but I mean that's I guess you know that's one way to do it. And I don't know about the investor side, but you know there is way too much, you know, and I experienced it firsthand. You know that this short-termism is really you know creating more negative results in society, I believe, than positive.
Okay. Yep. I agree with you on that. We can't think short term, and we can't do business as usual. We have to and also education as usual. We really need to take a step back and say, what is it for education? How do we engage these students who every time they go home, they have 3 or 4 glass items in front of them, the iPad, a phone, the computer, all there. And then we bring them into a classroom to listen to one person speak about the botany or something.
Yeah.
Should we be asking those students to create an app about botany, to learn how to do web scraping, use machine learning to learn about botany that way, program the computer so it learns, right? Those are all small projects that students around the world are doing, but not necessarily as part of the core curriculum. For businesses, we need to be thinking about, well, I have all this, my customers are generating all this data. How do I join an ecosystem so that I can delight them and, work with the telco, work with Google, work with the other companies to build up this picture of who my customer is and really individualize in an individualized way, meet them at their need. And we can do that today. And then and what are the jobs that are necessary to do that? How do I retask some of my guys that are going away so they can really delight the customer in a better way as well? I think those are all things that companies and schools should be considering looking at. Yeah. And it's not short-term thinking.
Right, yeah. Just the last bit on the education, but you moved here 7 years ago, and I think I read a comment from you saying that you're looking forward to your kids attending local school in Singapore because of their rigorous educational system. I mean, what is your view with the local education system here, and how is it benefiting your children to be fit for the future?
Oh man, this is when I got that comment because I saw my niece, who, when she was about 12 years old, I went to help her with the science assignment, and I was blown away. I was like, "You're learning this now? We learned this in university."
I think I was still learning about dinosaurs when I was 12 or something.
Yeah, exactly. So it was really cool to see the rigor. And when we thought about, my wife and I were thinking about it, and we kind of prayed about I remember it distinctly. In January, we prayed about what would happen. What's going on in New York? It's a good school system, but they wouldn't teach Chinese at all. Someone said, I remember we asked the school board about it, and then one of the other parents says, "Well, my family's from Sweden. Maybe we should teach Swedish in school." I was like, is that a world power? Is that a growing language? Yeah. So it's important. Not taking I like Sweden, not taking anything away. But we talked about that, and then the opportunity came up, and we said, it'd be good to have them learn Chinese, and then also because that's their mother tongue, and also to be more rigorous in school. And both have been delivered. I mean, my boys coming out of the New York school system, they would regularly protest at home. What? No, we're getting extra homework on the weekend, whereas in New York they give less or no homework on the weekend. It's the opposite. It's like, you have 2 days free, here's double, charge triple. So they learned what I know they've learned from the school system here is how to work hard. Because if you consider the brain a muscle, they've really flexed it here. Now, on the other side, though, what's great is in Singapore, there's a lot of opportunities for kids to go and learn programming, for example. There's classes like Saturday Kids, and they can go and try out things on the robotics labs, and
there's lots of enrichment classes in Singapore, right?
And I think it doesn't just have to be piano anymore. It can be robotics with Lego, to think a little bit differently. Or you can even do 3D programming down at 313 Somerset. There's like 3D programming classes to create games, and so I think that the combination of in-school and out-of-school engagement has been very, very good for them.
Right.
And now they like Singapore. So from a outcome perspective, they're enjoying they like school, you know.
Right.
So,
That's awesome.
pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, because most kids don't like going to school.
That's right. True.
How do you make more
True.
education fun so that they want to learn, and then then they're shaped well enough to kind of go into society where they become hate to use the word useful citizens, but I mean be value added for society, right?
And I think part of it has to do with parents too. I would my mother was a teacher, like I said earlier, and I saw her how she worked with students and such, and 80% of the students' attitude when they come into class is because of the parents.
I see.
The teacher is there for a few hours with that student, right? But all of the preparation, parents have a responsibility to do some basic things.
Yeah.
Number one, if learning, is all about reading, right? You have to read in math, you have to read in science, you have to read in history, you have to read in English. So then what should you be doing at home? Reading, right?
Yeah.
So out of the box, kids need to have a book in front of them and just read.
Yeah.
But number two is that the attitude of what happens when you don't do well. It shouldn't be, crushing. It should be encouraging in a sense, right?
Yeah, sure.
High expectations, but high expectations meaning that it's possible for you too if you do X, Y, Z, right?
Yeah.
And so, and recognizing that we all have different interests too. We're not all built to be mathematicians. Some of us should be in art. Some of us should be in architecture. Some of us should be in, and so those different sets of skills, exposing kids to a variety of things, letting them play, lets us as parents realize help them realize their dreams, because it's not about the parent's dream and what the kid should be. I want I'm a doctor. You should be this is a failed parent in a sense that didn't realize
their own dreams.
Right? Like, hey, let the kid figure out and be exposed to different things so they can try out their dreams. But and as a parent, being available, being able to listen to, being confident, being disciplined about discipline is really key as well. Because when we let kids just go, oh, we're your friend, you can do whatever you want. Oh, you want an iPad? Here's an iPad. You want another one? Here's another one. It sets a false expectation of what life is. It doesn't make sense, right? And so we have to, as parents, take a big responsibility in how we encourage, correct, and guide our kids. I've never seen a bad kid. Never in my life. I've only seen bad parents that impact the kid.
Yeah. No, that is so true. That is so true. And, I see more and more parents trying to outsource all that to schools these days, right? And before, the discipline was done at home, well, at least from my history.
Mine too.
and the education, of course, times are changing, education methods, what you need to learn, and all these things are changing. So you can't really control that process, and of course, schools should be ahead of, the teaching methodologies. But, what you could teach at home is how to deal with life.
That's right.
And
how to deal. Yeah.
And that's what I think. For me, that's what I think. I was never
I agree.
a smart kid. I never got the best grades in school. But my mom made sure that I'm a respectful human being that can take failure and use that to fuel your next success or something, right? So those kind of things, you don't need school to teach that.
That's right.
And that's the thing that I think I could teach my children.
Beautiful. That's you have very blessed children.
I hope so. Or maybe they just love. I think they're just watching YouTube all the time. But it's very hard. And with the modern technology that we have today, it's so easy to just give an iPad to your kid and then have them shut up, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
How many parents I see with their kids watching iPad while they're sitting eating dinner outside? I mean, that's complete disconnection. That's
Yeah.
not healthy. That's and when you read that Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, they never gave their kids phones.
Yeah.
You're like, okay.
Yeah, they're up to something. They never. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true. And that's, I think, we should take examples from that, and think about what the world will be in the future, and then how to prepare our children and even prepare ourselves as well, right?
And on that point, to prepare ourselves, we've never had so many classes right in front of us. Like, again, my son is very funny, Emmanuel. He's taking a class by Harvard on computer science.
Right. At age 15.
At 15.
Damn.
And he introduced it to his other friend, and now he's taking a course too. They're all 15-year-olds on this thing.
Wow.
So it's like, but it's how we use our time.
Yeah.
And so I asked one of the guy who was doing in logistics here, and I said, hey, what, you can upskill, you can learn about skills future. You're like, oh, I didn't know about that. And I said, well, why don't you take like an online course, and it's cheap or even free. Oh, I can't online, I don't have time. I was like, but you sit here at the dock and you're just waiting. Like, you could take a whole course, you could complete. Well, and there are a lot of excuses, right?
Yes.
And I think we have to, that's the part, that 40 to 60-year-old, that area, where how do we get them to think differently about education when education wasn't necessarily the most pleasant experience when they went through it, right?
Yeah.
So now you encourage someone, oh, come back to school. They're like,
Yeah, exactly.
I remember those days,
Yeah, it's like, are you going to have exams? I have to write like a long report? They're like, I don't want to do that anymore.
Right. Exactly. And so upskilling now is different, right? And so as educators, we have a responsibility to make sure that people understand you can be learning all the time, not just playing, Candy Crush or whatever, but really learning a language, different types of trade, etc., so you can remain relevant. So lots of things for us to look at and educate people on.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you very much for your time. This is really a blessed time to speak with you.
Well, same. Really enjoyed it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Future Design Podcast.